Good morning. Please join us as we sing together.
Good morning, everyone. And welcome to First Unitarian Church, where we strive together to build beloved community and to nurture the individual spirit. We welcome all of you gathered here and those of you joining us via live stream this morning. After the service, we would love it if you would join us for a special hybrid, virtual, and in-person coffee and social hour. For those of you attending virtually, you'll see a QR code after the service. And to join in person, follow the crowd over to the Buchanan Reception Hall, where today, after the service, Focus on Abortion, Americans Share Their Stories exhibit will be open if you didn't get a chance to see it last Sunday. One of our regular virtual social hour participants will be present at the in-person social hour and will be connected with our virtual participants, where a virtual tour will be provided for the Focus on Abortion for those participants. In-person and virtual participants will also be linked for conversation and for sharing. So please join us for this experiment in hybrid online in-person meetings. Additionally, at 2 p.m. in the Buchanan Reception Hall, we are hosting Faith Focused on Abortion. This interfaith event will be led by clergy and lay leaders from several faith traditions, and is an opportunity to visit the exhibit and share in a ritual for healing, liberation, and reproductive justice. The entrance for that event will be on Salmon Street. Also, next Sunday, February 5th, during social hour in Buchanan, there will be a social justice fair, complete with snacks, prizes, and fellowship. Our social action groups will share about their ministry and offer pathways for your involvement. Also, have you found First Unitarian during the pandemic and are now ready to become a member? If you've joined during COVID but you haven't had a chance to sign the book yet, if you have questions about what it means to be a member of the church, on February 5th, there will be opportunities to sign the book or simply to meet others who are new. We'll gather in the Channing Room at 11:45, right after the worship service, where Reverend Tom Disrude will provide some introductions. We'll also be having our bi-weekly trans-exclusive tea time event in the Channing Room after the service today to provide opportunities for connection for our trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming members to gather over a cup of tea or coffee. While this event is currently in person only, we do hope to offer online participation in the very near future. Finally, if you're looking for an opportunity to get involved with economic justice and build relationships with our houseless neighbors, we're looking for volunteers to serve for an hour or two a week to support our laundry and shower initiative, which would provide an opportunity for our houseless neighbors to shower and launder their clothes. Training and support will be provided. Please contact me directly for more information. Now let's take a moment to greet one another this morning. Please use the chat option if you're online, and if in person, greet each other now. That's all I had to say. Thank you. Everybody's asking. It's just like...
It's just reorganized. Yeah. It's good to see you.
Reverend Alison will light our chalice this morning. If you're joining from home, I invite you to light your own chalice or candle if you have one, or if you have access to the chat feature, type a lowercase I in the chat to represent a candle. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
The words of our call to worship are by James Villa Blake. His covenant, which sounds along the ages in Unitarian Universalists' sanctuaries. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Will you join in singing 125 from the Crush of Wealth and Power? We Need One Another by George Odell. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted.
We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid.
We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again.
We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone.
We need one another in the hour of success, when we look for someone to share our triumphs.
We need one another in the hour of defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again.
We need one another when we come to die and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey.
All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us.
And let us join in our doxology.
Lord,
Each month, we share our offering with the community organization that reflects the mission of our church. For the month of January, First Unitarian Portland shares our plate with Idaho Interfaith Organizing for Reproductive Freedom. The funds that we raise will support our interfaith siblings in a range of potential actions, which may include launching an Idaho ballot initiative for reproductive freedom, potential legal defense, direct aid for people seeking reproductive care, and/or building networks of support and organizing throughout Idaho. This is one direct way that we here in Oregon, which has the most protective pro-choice and pro-access laws nationally, can partner with our Idaho siblings as they strategize and build effective coalitions for reproductive freedom. Those of you here in the sanctuary can share your offering by using the QR code that will appear on your screen in a moment and can be found on the yellow slips of paper in the seat back in front of you. If you wish to share by cash or check, you can place your offering in the baskets of our ushers and the narthex following the service. Those who are joining online, please use the QR code or the web address for your offering. Your contribution to the mission of the church and to our partners for reproductive freedom is deeply appreciated. A lovely piece. We make space each week in our service to name the concerns of community life. We are a caring community, and pastoral support happens in a number of ways, through our ministers and through a dedicated team of lay ministers who offer one-on-one support, as well as facilitating small groups where congregants can offer support to one another. They also hold intentions in prayer each week. If you're here in person, you can light a candle of intention in one of our side galleries and write down your prayer of intention. Online, you can send a prayer to First Unitarian Portland, to prayer at firstunitarianportland.org, rather. For our concerns this week, first, we have a concern out of Memphis, Tennessee. I know those of us who have seen it have been appalled by the release of the violent video depicting the treatment of Tyree Nichols at the hands of Memphis police officers after he was brutally beaten and tased after a traffic stop in Memphis. Injuries from his encounter proving fatal as he died 3 days later. This is an instance when naming prayers for him and his family doesn't seem to be enough. May we continue to do the work of countering the insidiousness of white supremacy culture in ourselves, in our congregation, and in our communities. For our community concerns closer to home, I'm happy to report member Leslie Black is recovering after having hip replacement surgery on Tuesday of this past week. She's recovering well and in good spirits, but would appreciate your thoughts, prayers, and healing energy for a swift recovery. Member Tess Beisel broke her wrist in a fall during her weekly volunteer devotion of gleaning usable goods from the dump. She's awaiting news about the likelihood of surgery. She appreciates your good thoughts and prayers for a whole recovery. We want to note one special staff transition this week. Carrie, who has been the coordinator of our adult faith formation and membership program since 2018, is leaving her job here at the church as she and her wife immigrate to Canada next week. Carrie has been an invaluable support, especially helping fellow staff and congregants navigate online connections during the pandemic. She has also played a pivotal role in our church's support of Transgender Day of Remembrance services. Carrie, we wish you many blessings on your next chapter. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Carrie. Will you pray with me? Spirit of life and love, God of many names and of no name at all, please hear our prayer this day. We begin in gratitude for this day, for our lives, for the lives of those around us, for this community, for the earth whose abundance nourishes body and spirit, fish, plant, animal, mushroom, mycelium, oak, all connected in interlinked circles and cycles. In a world that would too often have us feeling isolated and alone, we ask that you call us to live out of that place of relatedness, of connection, of hope, and of possibility. When we would despair, help us to be open, especially attuned to the movement of love and change in our world. Many of us are despairing now to see once again headlines that include another death of a Black man at the hands of police. Help us to find a faithful way to move beyond these systems of power and iniquity. Hold us as we mourn, but remind us too gently that the ugliness that fed the violence lives in all of our bodies. This is the ugliness, the insidiousness of what we are up against, what we must fight with love, with understanding, and above all, the courage of open eyes, because, as Audre Lorde says, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. I pray that we can do the hard work of seeing where this white supremacy culture arises in us, in ourselves, in our church, in our institutions, and work to dismantle it in the name of all of those who have been most harmed by it. In the name of our own souls, call us to this high order. It's an imperative. And help us, hold us as we seek to root it out. In our living, in our being, help us to imagine a world where justice and liberation are possibilities, where love can be made real. And remind us, Spirit, that that love will never let us go, that all is connected to all. Amen, and blessed be. Let us be in silence for a moment together. Please join us in our hymn, Words That We Hold Tight. Something like that. And our reading is from Rebecca Ann Parker. Choose to bless the world. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. the mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all life, even yours. And while there is injustice, anesthetization, or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love. Protesting, urging, insisting, that which is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the company of earth, the chorus of life welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility, waiting.
Where does your story begin? That was the question Ruby Sales, civil rights activist, social critic, and public theologian, asked those of us who were present at a gathering centered around faith, arts, and justice. She called on different people in the audience. They responded in different ways, but many retold their birth narrative or another birthing story or a story of transformation from the middle of their lives. No, she said, your story doesn't begin with you. And she went on to model what she meant, telling the story of her great-great-grandmother and the elders in her village, followed by her great-grandmother, and so on. Your story begins with your ancestors. Ruby Sales spoke about this act of remembering and reconnection as decolonizing our personal narrative. We did not spring from nothing. From day one, we arrived to a place connected to stories of oppression or of domination, of harming or being harmed, of healing, of liberation, and more. The activities of those who came before give us life and present the opportunities and the obstacles that each of us has to overcome. Our story also doesn't end with us. It continues through our descendants, sometimes our own children, grandchildren, and so on, and always the people who come after us in the villages we are a part of, the communities in which we live and move and have our being. Our Unitarian Universalist communities are one of those village spaces. Where does your religious story begin is another potent question. As a minister, I have heard many of these spiritual journeys, and as with personal narratives, some people begin with themselves. This is more and more likely these days as more and more people find religion and may have had none growing up or little exposure as a child. And yet, for as long as humans have roamed the earth, we have had a need of meaning-making and rituals to mark the milestones of our lives. Even if our parents and grandparents or the mentors throughout our growing up were no longer religious, the moral values that they passed on to us were often rooted and shaped by connection with or disconnection from a particular religious community that buoyed up their ancestors or exiled them, or a bit of both. My mother is a good example of the latter. She was shunned by her Jewish Orthodox community of her childhood, both for her sexuality and her openness to date people across the religious divide. Yet she was shaped by making space for Shabbos, the Sabbath, for ritual, and for retelling stories of survival until they made it into your bones. When she ultimately married a Christian man, they found a community that would welcome the fullness of who they were here in our midst. My religious story begins with ancestors and a road that ultimately winds into Unitarian Universalism. It is not simply that I was born here. And besides, none of us in this room is old enough to have started the story of Unitarianism or Universalism or this church. No one here is 150, I think. We are all the spiritual heirs to those who have come before us and set the altar tables for us, and how we reform and reshape our faith community will impact who can find a place here at our table in the future. Our personal story and our religious story do not begin or end with us. It is not simply a question of who am I, but rather whose am I, and to whom do I belong? We are rooted in relationship, past, present, and future. Our faith is founded on a principle of being rooted in relationship. We call the particular relationship one of covenant, which comes from the Latin root cum venire, or to come together. It is the practice of coming together around a set of spiritual agreements that unites us across our history. The covenants created in our churches beginning in the 1600s and every centennial since have been both recognizable and radically different from what came before. And yet, this practice of re-covenanting every year, in essence, every time we have new members join us, and throughout all time, has never ceased. It may be the one constant in Unitarian Universalism. It is our faithful, faith-filled way of doing religion. It is baked into our practice that you cannot, and this can be controversial, you cannot be a Unitarian Universalist completely by yourself. Yes, you can be a free thinker by yourself. You can believe in religious freedom and the value of religious pluralism by yourself. And you can hold the common ideals of Unitarian Universalists of the day. But being a free thinker without a community, you may not go that deep. Believing in religious freedom without practicing making space for others can actually be quite shallow. And ideals are meaningless if they are not expressed through action. Again, many of the ideals shared in our current covenant of 8 principles and 6 sources can only be realized in a collective community. By the way, mark your calendars for February 26th following the service, for our board will be hosting a dialogue on the renewal of covenant that is happening throughout our denomination as we speak, in anticipation of a vote at this summer's General Assembly. This weekend, a number of us have spent time with the Reverend John Burens, our scholar in residence for the seminary for a day yesterday. One group of ancestors that continues to heavily influence us to this day are known as the Transcendentalists, a movement that was born in our midst in the 1800s. You may be familiar with some of the names, such as the Reverend Ralph Waldo Emerson, Margaret Fuller, Julia Ward Howe, and the Reverend Thomas Starr King, whose words are often credited as the inspiration for the founding of this church. At a time when Unitarianism was centered on reason and logic and a historical critical approach to the Bible, the Transcendentalists were the young rebels in our midst who implored their community to also listen to the stirrings of their spirit, to their deepest intuition, to their direct experience of wonder and awe and mystery, and to the revelation of nature beyond the walls of any sanctuary. The Transcendentalists are often misunderstood, as John shared yesterday, because most people read about them in English class. The Transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau's book on nature Walden may give the impression that the transcendentalists spent the bulk of their time feeling a connection to the natural world in retreat and practicing alone. But no, the transcendentalists were shaped by the practice of covenant, and although they spent time in reflection, they also spent significant time in community, crossing the divides of class, of race, of gender, and organizing collective power to bend the moral arc of the universe towards justice. Gandhi was inspired by the words of Thoreau to begin a movement of nonviolence. How do we realize our covenants? It takes more than just thinking ideas into being. Unitarians tried that for a long time, and it isn't practical. It takes practice. A practice of personal reflection on meaning and values, yes, followed by a practice of what John calls spiritual friendships, which is something we offer here. Conversations which deepen and broaden our perspectives, and organized communities like this one, which can bring our values and our ethical promises to life here and in the world. We are a community of covenantal practice. We encourage and make space for personal reflection and spiritual friendships in our worship and our practice groups, like the Loving Kindness meditation group, which meets on Mondays at 8 p.m. on Zoom, in our classes, and so on. We also do not let these ideas languish, but rather aim to organize through our social justice efforts to build the beloved community, to dismantle oppression, and to repair the persistent harm to people on the margins and to Mother Earth. Today, our hearts are heavy with the persistence of harm that comes from policing Black and brown bodies in the name of safety and peace. Just this weekend, many of us bore witness in word or in images to both the violent nature of these policing efforts, and I hope you have also seen the beauty of the young man whose life was taken, Tyree Nichols, a skateboarder, a photographer, a father, a son. The police unit was aptly named Scorpion, a deadly, venomous creature, with the false overlay for the letters in the word scorpion of street crimes operation to restore peace in our neighborhoods. Peace for whom? If there is no justice, there can be no peace. We are called by the 8th principle of our covenant to dismantle racist systems and to respond with all our love, creativity, and courage in the face of such brutality. As a newcomer to this community, not here even 6 months yet, I have been moved by the testimonies that I have heard as to the experience of the police response to protests in the streets here in Portland during the pandemic. And I have been moved by the testimony of people of color about the over-policing of certain neighborhoods here in Portland. It is clear that we have the work of dismantling and repair and reconstructing to be done. What is our collective work to fulfill the covenants of our people and the mission of this, our congregation? And here is our current mission. And one day we might imagine the words that come to us today, but here are the words that sing to us now. Our mission: to create a welcoming community of diverse individuals, to promote love, reason, and freedom in religion, to foster lifelong spiritual growth, and to act for social justice. I want to invite everyone in this room and online and in the coming weeks into a period of personal reflection. And then I hope that we can gather this spring in a series of community conversations that I will be hosting to reflect on what it is that we hope for the future of our emerging shared ministry. These conversations will be happening in person and online. I also want to invite you to come to my installation service on Sunday, April 16th, here in this room at 4 p.m., the formal celebration of your calling me into shared ministry with you. I'm so excited for the installation where we will covenant together in worship and hear an inspiring message from the Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt, a mentor of mine and the president of Star King School for the Ministry. It is my hope, though, that we can use this fertile time in the first year of a new ministry and of the emergence post-pandemic to plant seeds of change, as well as to water the seeds that have nourished us thus far in faith. It is a time of shared possibilities and creativity as we imagine and learn together what traditions continue to serve us well, what we may wish to let go of, and what we would like to begin for the first time, or perhaps begin again. The community conversations will surround the installation and take place in March and April and May. So stay tuned and sign up. It's ironic when you called me through a vote in May to join you this fall as your minister, that the word that we use in our tradition is a settled minister. However, we are not settling for our congregation as it is. We are both called to a shared ministry where we can adapt and grow and learn with one another about how to continuously co-create and recreate ministries which are spiritually alive, justice-centered, and radically inclusive. We are preparing tables for those who are here beside us now and those who are yet to come. While the first year of a new ministry is a fertile time for such work, and we don't want precious time to pass without making space for these community conversations, I promise it won't be the only time we do this. It is our work over time as we recovenant and reflect on our mission with our members and friends, the fullness of our spiritual village of children, youth, and adults, both now and again at times in the future. As I begin to know more about your history, one thing is very clear. While love is the ground of being at this church, you are not the same community you were in the late 1800s. You are not even the same community that you were 20 years ago, and maybe not even the same community that you were last year. While some aspects are constant, you continue to grow and change. So let us do the work of wise planting together. And may we grow in our capacity to offer hospitality, healing, and hope in a time of isolation, suffering, and a resignation to the world as it is. For we have covenanted for such a time as this. We are the spiritual heirs of a faith that reveres the past, but trusts the dawning future more. We are not here merely to preserve what was or is, but here to practice love in ways that build towards the church and world that ought to be. May it be so, and amen. And now in our going, may the light of love bless us and keep us. May it shine out from within us. May it be gracious unto us. And may it make of all of us healers and hope builders and community forgers. For this is the day that you and I are given. So let us rejoice and be glad in it. Go and build real peace. Go and practice love. Amen.